From soldier to outcast, I was publicly humiliated and cast aside by the system I served. But beneath the shame, I planned my quiet revenge, exposing corruption and reclaiming my honor. This is a story of survival, justice, and unexpected redemption. I want to share my story with you. I sit on the edge of a cracked concrete planter, back against a graffiti-scarred wall, watching the morning crowd shuffle past the coffee kiosk like sleepwalkers. My uniform now faded rags, my medals long since pawned for rent. I measure people the same way I measured targets overseas. Every twitch, every hesitation a clue to their hidden motives. A barista spills espresso on an upscale lawyer's suit, and I register the exact angle of the spill, how the dark liquid crawls toward the pristine white cuff. He flicks his wrist, oblivious to the humiliation, and I note how his arrogance shields him from embarrassment. I've spent months in these shadows, shrinking into a shell of the man I used to be. I was a ghost to everyone already, but I still see everything. That relentless soldier's I never sleeps. Every second I catalog the world's tiniest vulnerabilities, waiting for a crack I can exploit. The smell of stale cigarettes and burnt sugar mixes in the air as commuters press around me, phones glued to faces, anxiety coursing through them like cold water. I remember the days I'd patrol dusty streets in far-off lands, scanning for roadside bombs and insurgent footsteps. Back then I had purpose. Back then I was respected. But a single report, a single accusation, my career dissolved overnight. They said I disobeyed orders, caused unnecessary collateral damage. They never asked for my side. My service record turned into a courtroom exhibit, my sworn oath shredded by bureaucracy. Family turned their backs. Friends whispered behind closed doors. The medals that once felt like iron anchors on my chest vanished in a week, sold to pay for lawyers I couldn't afford. Now I'm reduced to this, a phantom who knows too much and demands even less. On my left, a homeless man picks through trash bins for breakfast scraps. On my right, a suited executive checks his Rolex before stepping into a black SUV. Neither sees me, and that's how I like it. Because while they stare at their digital screens, I'm devising plans in my head, logistics, contingencies, escape routes. I know that silver Bentley idles half a block away every morning to pick up the lawyer with the espresso stain. I remember his face, the smug half-smirk he wore when he monitored my deposition footage on a laptop. He was the one who read the prosecutor's carefully edited highlights, the one who decided I was guilty before anybody else spoke. He represents the arrogance of a system that chews soldiers up and spits them out. He'll be my starting point. But that's a mission for later. For now, I simply watch. I notice the sun glint off a drone hovering high above the street, an emblem of the same surveillance state that sent me here. I watch a group of tourists posing for selfies in front of a historic monument, airbrushing their own smiles into the future of a country they barely understand. I hear the hollow echo of my own heartbeat, steady and controlled. This is me in exile, a man armed only with observation and patience. They think I'm broken, that I've surrendered. They don't know this quiet is deliberate. They haven't realized that every day I'm gathering intel, refining my strategy, sharpening the blade concealed beneath layers of dust and defeat. As the sun climbs, I press my back flatter against the cold wall, pull my threadbare jacket tighter, and slip into the crowd. No one registers my departure, that's the point. I drift through groups of bankers and students, a ghost among the living, cataloging every detail, parking tickets tucked under windshield wipers, security cameras angled just enough to miss the alley, the rotting boards on a delivery door. This is the first act of reclaiming what they stole, my sight, my silence, my ability to strike without warning. The world thinks they've buried the soldier. They haven't buried him. They've only given him the perfect hiding place. And he's been waiting for this moment ever since they ripped away his dignity. I didn't see it coming until the moment the polished town square erupted in mocking laughter. I'd been waiting at the bus stop for hours, gathering scraps of information on the city councilman who torpedoed my benefits claim, watching him stride through the morning haze like an imperious statue. He was flanked by aides in crisp suits, his name displayed in gold letters above the podium where he'd give his speech. I thought I was invisible. I thought my soldier's patience would hold. Then he pointed at me. The first shot was a casual comment about veterans begging on every corner, delivered with such practiced nonchalance that the crowd barely registered it. I blended into the backdrop of pigeons and pigeon shit until he paused mid-rant, narrowed his eyes, and asked me directly, what business did I have in his city if I couldn't even stand on my own 2 feet? His aides rustled through a folder, produced a photograph of me in uniform, photoshopped to emphasize dirt on my cheeks, the tired droop of my shoulders, and passed it around like a gruesome trading card. I felt the sudden hush, the weight of 100 stares drilling through my spine. Then came the tweet. The councilman's voice was calm as he recited every accusation he'd ever heard against me: desertion, misconduct, accusations buried beneath red tape, reading them aloud for every phone camera to capture. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said with a theatrical flourish, "here stands an example of entitlement of someone who took more than he earned." Someone in the crowd laughed and it rippled out like poison. They didn't see a broken man, they saw a punchline. I heard the click of record buttons and felt the sting of realization that in an instant, my humiliation would spread across timelines and news feeds, immortalized in a digital gallows. They offered me a chair on the stage, an insult wrapped in false concern. I stood frozen the way you do when a bomb is about to detonate and you can't run. He insisted and I sunk into the plastic seat, the kind they hand out at children's recitals. A mic was shoved in front of me, wires taped to the wood planks. He asked me to say a few words, an apology to the city, a confession of my faults, maybe a promise not to cause trouble again. My throat went dry. The memory of insurgent gunfire sharpened in my mind, but none of that prepared me for the volley of jeers raining down. Someone shouted, "Go home, loser." Others imitated a marching cadence, mocking my uniform, my service. The breaking point came when he pulled out a sheaf of papers, documents proving that the government had granted me a small lump sum for PTSD therapy, money I needed to adjust to civilian life. He held them aloft and announced that I'd squandered it all on narcissistic therapy, that I was unfit for society, unworthy of respect. He crumpled the papers in one hand and crushed my last shred of dignity. The crowd roared approval, my legs shook. I could feel tears pooling behind my eyes, fury igniting a fire in my gut hotter than any desert sun. I mouthed the words he demanded, "I'm sorry," but they felt like ashes on my tongue. I apologized for being a veteran, I apologized for needing help, I apologized for still breathing in his pristine city. I saw cameras flash and recorded my shame from every angle. The councilman smirked, basking in the applause that followed as though he'd delivered a masterstroke. I was reduced to nothing more than a public exhibit, a lesson on humility, a cautionary tale they'd share whenever someone dared to question the system. When it was over, they stood me up and led me off the stage like a stray dog being dragged back to its kennel. I walked past the lectern where his name gleamed in gold, past the aides who turned away mid-stride, past the techs who shut off cameras without a second glance. In that moment, I felt every ounce of my worth drain away, leaving me a hollow shell of the man I once was. The pavement felt unstable beneath my boots, and my heart pounded so loud I thought it might betray me. They thought they broke me. They thought that with one orchestrated act of cruelty, they'd stomp out any spark of defiance. But as I stumbled past the last mocking face, something inside me snapped into focus. The horror of that public disgrace burned into my memory, searing every detail, the echo of laughter, the mic's metallic taste, the crunch of those therapy papers in his fist. That moment, the final indignity didn't end me. It awakened something darker and more determined. And I swore, right there on that broken pavement, that they'd regret underestimating a soldier pushed to the brink. I wake before dawn, the taste of that public reckoning still sour in my mouth, and I force myself out of the threadbare cot I've been calling home. No room for self-pity. My training drills into me that even in the most dire situations, clarity comes from discipline. I sit cross-legged on the floor, pull out a tattered notebook, and title the top of the page, Operation Retribution. Under it, I write objective: restore honor, expose corruption, deliver consequences. The words feel heavy, like the weight I once bore in battle, but they also ignite a familiar sense of purpose. I know this is my mission now, and I treat it like any deployment. Gather intel, analyze the enemy, exploit vulnerabilities, strike with precision. I outline my primary target, Councilman Garrett Holt, symbol of entitlement, architect of my disgrace. I jot down everything I've observed: his rigid daily schedule, the black SUV with tinted windows, his reliance on hand-picked security personnel, the digital trail he thinks no one monitors. I note that his arrogance makes him predictable. Every morning at 8:15 he steps onto that marble stage, and every evening at 6:45 he retreats to his penthouse suite, isolated behind private security. He surrounds himself with yes-men, afraid to question his narrative. That fear is his greatest weakness. If they doubt him, his carefully curated image crumbles. I underline divide and conquer in red ink. Next, I list my own assets. Observation skills honed in hostile territory. A network of overlooked people, homeless informants, underpaid baristas, overburdened janitors, who move through Garrett Holt's sphere unnoticed. I remember the barista who spills espresso on Holt's suit. She's nervous but capable of following instructions if she trusts me. I note the delivery driver's routines, the blind spots in the city's surveillance grid, even the maintenance schedule for the municipal Wi-Fi nodes near the town square. Every one of these little pieces can become a lever. I also want to secure a reliable means of recording and broadcasting what I uncover. so I sketch out the idea of hacking the security cameras to capture Holt's unguarded moments and stream them straight to local news outlets. Lastly, I create contingencies. If Holt beefs up his security, I'll adapt, use social engineering to infiltrate his inner circle. If the barista refuses, there's always the janitor who cleans his offices after hours. If digital channels get locked down, I'll resort to old-school leaflets and face-to-face whispers. I remind myself that patience is a weapon. I'll wait for the perfect moment when Holt's guard is down, when his arrogance blinds him to the trap. I finish the briefing with a quote I once lived by in the sandbox. No plan survives contact with the enemy unaltered, but a good plan morphs into victory. I close the notebook, the page crisp with intent, and feel the fog of despair lift just enough to make room for cold focus. This is the turning point. The mission has been briefed, the enemy's weaknesses mapped, my assets mobilized. Now comes the waiting and the strike. I start the day before dawn again, slipping into the edges of the city like a shadow. My first stop is the coffee kiosk where the barista May works. She's jittery whenever Garrett Holt strolls in, but I reassure her with a quiet nod and $1 pressed into her hand. She tells me his exact order: double shot latte, oat milk, no sugar, and the time he arrives, 8:12 a.m. sharp. I memorize that, along with the route he takes from his car to the podium. I watch his gait, the hand that grips his phone, the slight slump of his shoulders when he thinks nobody's looking. I jot every nuance in my notebook. Left foot first, brow furrowed, the faint tremor in his right hand. Next, I tail his black SUV from a safe distance, blending into the early commuter traffic. I follow him to the municipal building, where he greets each staffer with a stiff handshake and a practiced smile. I note the hierarchy: 3 assistants huddle by the door, flanking him to shield any approach from the crowd. But I also see cracks: an intern who flinches whenever Holt raises his voice, a security guard who checks his phone more often than he scans IDs, a window washer who hoists himself up the side of the building at mid-morning. I mark their positions on a rough map, highlighting the blind spots where cameras overlap and where they don't. That afternoon, I slip behind the scenes at a civic gala Holt hosts to raise funds for local veterans. I present myself as a volunteer, picking up stray napkins and refilling water pitchers. From that vantage, I overhear Holt boasting to a donor about an offshore account he maintains to funnel discretionary funds. He jokes that nobody bothers to audit donations once they're laundered through a shell corporation. My pulse quickens. I've found the dirty secret. I follow him after the gala to the basement garage, watch him unlock a steel locker and stash a thick envelope inside. He glances around, satisfied that no one saw. I mark the locker's serial number and notice the guard's shift change at 11:30 p.m. I recruit the janitor, a man named Ray, who sweeps the hallways late at night. I slip him a handwritten note with the locker location and instructions to photograph the envelope when the coast is clear. He texts me the grainy image: stacks of cash wrapped in a rubber band, the councilman's signature scrawled on the front of the envelope. That's enough proof to ruin him if I can broadcast it at the right moment. But I continue gathering intel, cataloging every detail of his personal habits. How he opens his mail, the CCTV feeds linked to his home, the single backup hard drive where he keeps a digital ledger of his illicit transactions. One evening, I trail Holt to a quiet restaurant downtown. He's meeting someone, an aide I've never seen before. From a shadowed corner, I overhear the aide's name, Marissa Lane. They exchange a sealed folder and a USB drive, then part ways. I follow Marissa to her apartment building, note the code panel and the camera angle. I know that folder contains evidence of Holt's darkest schemes, enough to collapse his empire if exposed. But I need more. I need time. I need every piece in place so that when I strike, the world will have no choice but to watch him fall. By the end of the week, I've mapped Holt's entire daily rhythm. I know when he jogs through the park at 7:00 a.m., when he meets donors at the country club, when he returns to his penthouse by 6:45. I've secured allies in May and Ray, and I've retrieved photographic proof of his offshore malfeasance. I even downloaded a backup of the digital ledger from his hard drive using a borrowed copy of Marissa's USB stick. The mission isn't complete yet, but the reconnaissance phase is over. I close my notebook and let the weight of my findings settle in my gut. I've peeled back the layers of Holt's facade and found nothing but greed and fear. Now I know exactly where to press. The trap is set. All that remains is to lure him in. I pick the moment carefully. He jogs through Elmwood Park every Tuesday at exactly 7:00 a.m., headphones in, eyes forward, alone. I wait 2 nights before the trap, studying his stride pattern, the way he slows at the water fountain, how he pauses to tie his left shoelace just beyond the oak tree. That tree becomes ground zero. I slip a USB drive inside a slim black envelope stamped with the logo of a respected investigative news outlet, one I invented, and tuck it into a fake press pass. I leave the envelope pinned beneath the oak's bark with a single nail, the edges camouflaged by moss and fallen leaves. On the morning of the operation, I station May at her coffee kiosk 2 blocks from the park entrance. Her assignment is simple. When Holt's order comes through, she slips a second USB drive, identical to the one in the park envelope, into the bottom of his paper cup, taped beneath the lid so he can't see it. She thinks she's playing a harmless prank on a jerk. I reinforce her nerves with a whispered promise that everything will be fine. She doesn't need to know the whole plan. Ignorance is her unknowing shield. I move into position near the oak tree myself, concealed behind the thick trunk's shadow. My phone is set to record, the live feed app primed to broadcast the moment to a local hacker collective on standby. I tap the screen twice, stream started. Then I wait, heartbeat steady, senses sharpened by weeks of planning. 7:00 exactly he appears. The sunrise glints off his sweatband and I see his chest rise in practiced inhalations. He rounds the path, headphones muted just enough for me to hear his footfalls on gravel. He glances at his watch, then slows near the fountain. True to form, he steps under the oak right into my trap. He clenches the press pass between his fingers, curious at the investigate label in bold red letters. He peels the moss away, exposes the black envelope. He hesitates a moment, scanning the clearing for witnesses, then tucks it into his pocket and jogs on. That's all it takes. I slip back toward the kiosk to watch from a distance as May hands him the latte. He lifts the cup in a single motion, frowns at the extra weight, peels back the lid, and there it is, the second USB drive taped beneath. He freezes like a cornered animal, blood draining from his face. He checks his pockets, eyes darting between the drive and the mug as if they'll vanish. May glances up at him, eyebrows raised innocently. He crumples the cup and paces, trying to piece together why 2 identical drives, each bearing a label that promises explosive evidence, have found their way into his morning routine. I follow discreetly as he abandons his jog and hurries to a nearby bench, palms shaking. He plugs the drive into his phone's adapter, no security lock, and the screen floods with open folders named offshore accounts, bribe ledgers, private emails. He tries to swipe the drive's data closed, but the files are already uploaded to the news outlet's server, time-stamped and unstoppable. His phone buzzes with incoming emails from local reporters demanding comment, the live feed from Elmwood's CCTV feeding into the same network. He taps the screen in panic, but every deletion is mirrored on the cloud. I slip away as sirens start wailing in the distance, my signal that the hacker collective has tipped off the press and law enforcement. Within minutes, reporters converge on the park, cameras swinging toward the oak tree, microphones thrust into Holt's face as he emerges searching for me. He stumbles backward, realized how deeply I've penetrated his defenses. He's caught off guard, no security detail in sight. The park transforms into a live broadcast stage, his chauffeur-driven SUV idling at the gate entirely irrelevant now. Back at my hideout, I review the live footage on my laptop, savor the moment. The drive has done its work. His offshore account details are public, his misuse of donations laid bare for every taxpayer to see. Police officers cuff him on camera and his assistants rush forward in dismay, scrambling to salvage the situation. The look on his face, eyes wide, mouth slack, reminds me of that podium where he humiliated me. Only now the roles are reversed. Later, when the chaos settles, I close my notebook marked Operation Retribution and feel the first genuine flicker of peace since it all began. The trap was set with minimal violence, maximum impact. I didn't have to confront him directly, didn't need to draw his blood to reclaim my honor. The echoes of his downfall will reverberate through every council meeting, every press briefing, every whispered conversation in that city he once lorded over. And somewhere in the back of my mind, another mission is taking shape, but for now, I let myself breathe. I've struck the first blow and it landed without warning. The rest will unfold soon enough. I watch the news feed flicker on my phone as Holt staggers out of the police van, handcuffed and pale, his expensive suit stained with the public shame I crafted for him. But this isn't the end of the story. The real ambush is waiting in his penthouse suite, the one place he still believes he controls. I slip inside the building under the guise of a maintenance call. The hallways are quiet at midnight, corridors lined with sterile carpeting, the hum of air conditioners my only soundtrack. I know each camera angle, each motion sensor's blind spot. I move like a shade. At the elevator, I press the button for his floor and ride in silence, imagining his face when he realizes what's coming next. The doors open to a marble entryway lit by a single chandelier. His security guard lies unconscious behind the reception desk, a sedative in his coffee cup. I gave him an anonymous tip about caffeine contaminated with allergy medication. He's been out cold for 30 minutes, enough time for Holt to come home and trigger the second act of reckoning. I slip into the back hallway and lean against the door to Holt's office. I press my ear to the wood and hear footsteps approaching, his slow, measured pace a heartbeat away from panic. I glance at my watch, 12:07 a.m., right on schedule. I unlatch my bag and pull out the final lever in my plan, the USB drive loaded with every bit of evidence, plus a backup of the digital ledger, the offshore account details, and CCTV clips from his weekly jog. I place the drive on the desk, next to the nameplate that reads Councilman Garrett Holt. I step back into the shadow of the open doorway just as he turns the key. He steps inside, locks the door behind him without noticing the faint creak in the recessed panel. He frowns at the scattered papers on the desk, printed emails, bank statements, witness affidavits. He picks up the drive, reads the label, confirmation of misconduct. His eyes flick toward the window where the city skyline glows like a distant war zone. I step forward into the lamplight, arms raised slightly to show I'm unarmed, though my mind races with exit strategies if this goes sideways. He drops the drive on the desk like it's burning. "Who the hell are you?" he hisses, voice trembling with a mixture of anger and fear. He isn't the polished demagogue from the podium anymore, he's exposed, vulnerable. I let the silence stretch out, let him squirm under the weight of uncertainty. "Your actions have consequences," I say evenly. "You thought you could humiliate a veteran, destroy a man's life with a staged spectacle. You thought no one would ever dig deeper." I step closer, noticing the tremor in his jaw, the sheen of sweat on his brow. He reaches for a drawer, maybe a weapon, but hesitates. I nod toward the desk. "Everything you need is right there." He stares at the papers, then back at me as if deciding which threat is more immediate, my presence or the avalanche of proof laid bare. I give him time to choose. When he doesn't reach for a gun, I continue. "I gave you a public shaming. Then I gave you a discreet fall in front of the press. Now I'm giving you a personal one. You have exactly two options. You resign, return every dollar you stole, and issue a public apology to every veteran you demeaned. Or I call the local news at 9 p.m. and forward every file in that folder to every station in the state." His face contorts in rage and disbelief. "You're blackmailing me," he spits. "I'm exposing corruption." He picks up the USB drive, cradles it like a grenade. "This isn't justice." He steps toward me, voice rising. I counter by sliding a printed email across the desk, a message he sent to a shell corporation confirming a six-figure kickback. His hand slaps the paper and it flutters to the floor. "Justice is blind," I reply quietly. "But consequences are. You chose this game when you chose to break a soldier's spirit for your own political gain. I'm simply holding you to account." He looks at me as though he's finally seeing a man he thought was broken and now stands unbroken. He waits, hardly daring to breathe. After a long moment, he closes his eyes, exhales, and nods. "I'll resign," he mumbles, voice cracked. "I'll give it all back." He pulls out his phone and calls his lawyer. He gives instructions on how to wire the money back to the Veterans Fund and drafts a resignation speech. I watch as he types, hands shaking so badly he mistakes words. He looks up at me, desperation in his eyes. I step back into the shadows. "Good," I say. "You'll make things right, and if you don't, the rest of your dirty secrets go public." He swallows hard and nods again. I turn toward the door, placing the USB drive back in my pocket. I hear the key turn in the lock, feel the door click behind me. I work my way back to the elevator, ascend to the lobby, slip out onto the empty street. Sirens approach, back up for Holt if he tries to renege, but I'm already gone. Under the neon haze of streetlights, I press my palm against my chest where my dog tags used to rest. I close my eyes and let the night swallow me. My mission is accomplished. The ambush unfolded exactly the way I planned, on my terms, without a single shot fired. Garrett Holt's world collapsed in that office at 12:07 a.m., and mine, for the first time in months, feels whole again. I wake to the crackle of breaking news on a borrowed tablet, the glow of headlines splashed across the screen like a war map. Councilman Holt resigns amid corruption scandal. Offshore accounts reveal millions in misused veteran funds. Political titans fall stuns constituents. Each article greets me with the same triumphant tone, journalists racing to outdo one another in outrage, editors tripping over superlatives. I sip a weak black coffee in the corner of a rundown diner, my eyes scanning every detail on the screen. This is the fallout I engineered, the dominoes I tipped over. On television, footage plays of Holt stepping onto a courthouse stoop flanked by solemn officers, handcuffed and dazed. He avoids eye contact with reporters shouting questions. His once-proud voice cracks as he reads a brief statement, an apology that rings hollow, a promise to cooperate with investigators. In the background, protesters chant slogans demanding restitution for veterans, their placards calling him traitor and crook. The crowd's energy is electric, unfiltered fury, unleashed upon the man who thought he could bend rules with impunity. I lean back in my booth, the vinyl seat creaking beneath me. The waitress refills my cup without asking, a small kindness in a world gone mad. I glance around the diner, truckers nursing breakfasts, a mother juggling spilled cereal, a teenager with earbuds blasting music. No one here knows me, no one recognizes the phantom guerrilla architect of Holt's downfall. I like it that way. Because the moment I show my face, the intoxicating silence of victory will shatter. On my tablet, I scroll through social media feeds. Donors who once lined Holt's pockets now distance themselves in viral video apologies. A major veterans charity releases a statement condemning his actions and pledging to audit all future contributions. Legal analysts debate whether Holt faces federal charges or a plea bargain. Talk shows speculate on prison time. I bookmark a thread where a former aide alleges he siphoned funds for personal luxury trips. Each new detail is another nail in his coffin, another layer of ruin I laid bare. I close the tablet and exhale. The city that once looked past me now watches in collective shame as Holt's empire crumbles. Council seats are in upheaval, special elections scheduled, power vacuums forming in every committee he chaired. His network of allies unravels, lawyers dropping his case, lobbyists retracting endorsements, security firms severing ties. He's become radioactive, untouchable even by those who fueled his rise. All because he underestimated a man he humiliated in public. I leave a few bills on the table and step into the morning glare. Outside, the streets hum with the rush of routine, commuters pecking at phones, newspaper hawkers shouting headlines like personal insults. A news van parks across the street from the courthouse, crews set up cameras, cables snake over sidewalks. I pause under a traffic light and watch a reporter rehearse lines about integrity and accountability, her makeup perfect, her suit crisp. She doesn't see me, though I'm closer than she thinks. I slip away before the light changes, folding into the flow of pedestrians. By afternoon, I've returned to my hideout, a sparsely furnished room stacked with notebooks and cracked maps. I power on my laptop and sift through the final batch of evidence I hooked into local servers, the ledger transfers, the indisputable paper trail. Federal investigators have already subpoenaed the files I provided. In a week, Holt will face indictment. In a month, he may stand trial. I watch the email confirmations of news outlets receiving press releases, dates set for press conferences, on-the-record statements from whistleblowers. The clock is ticking against him. I lean back in my folding chair and rub my temples. There's a satisfaction here deeper than revenge, an affirmation that the system isn't impervious, that one disciplined man can puncture the facade of power. I catch a glimpse of my reflection in the dark screen, hollow cheeks, unshaven jaw, eyes burning with purpose. I've reclaimed my honor and in doing so, restored faith for countless others who thought justice was reserved for the elite. Outside, the city pulses with post-scandal energy, gossip, outrage, speculation. Inside, I pack away the final documents, close every notebook with a deliberate snap. The mission that began with public disgrace has ended in systemic reckoning. Councilman Garrett Holt's world is irrevocably broken. Mine, though battered, stands rebuilt on a foundation of quiet resolve. I tuck my dog tags, once sold, now recovered, in my pocket as a reminder of where I started and how far I've come. I step onto the empty street, blending into the rhythm of the afternoon crowd. The veteran in exile has completed his operation. The aftermath is messy, chaotic, but it's fair. And in the unrest of Holt's collapse, I find a kind of peace. That a man scorned can become the architect of justice, that the shadows he inhabited were merely the staging ground for his inevitable return. I wander through the late afternoon haze, unsure where to go next. The city's hum feels different now, frenzied, hopeful, as if people sense something has shifted. I don't own much beyond the clothes on my back and the battered notebook I've carried since Operation Retribution began. But my shoulders feel lighter, unburdened by the shame that once shackled me. I pause at a crossroads, watching an elderly man struggle with grocery bags, their contents spilling onto the curb. I jog over and help him gather his apples and canned soup. He looks up at me, surprised, and offers a small nod of thanks. I realize I haven't done something that simple in months, helped someone without calculating the angle or outcome. The next morning, I get a message on an untraceable burner. A single line reads, "Meet me at Veterans Hall, 10 a.m. Colonel Andrews." My heart skips. Colonel James Andrews was my commanding officer during my first deployment. He was the kind of leader who saw potential where others saw liability, who disciplined with a firm hand and a steady stare. I sold off my old dog tags to make ends meet, but I clutched the memory of his voice in my mind whenever despair threatened. I show up at the red brick building, polished windows reflecting a bright sky. Inside, banners hang honoring fallen soldiers and friendly voices echo in the foyer. It feels like home in a way my apartment never did. I wait near a bulletin board cluttered with flyers for therapy sessions and support groups. Then I see him, Colonel Andrews, uniform crisp, hair silver, posture as disciplined as ever. His eyes hold something I haven't seen in a long time, respect. He extends his hand. It feels strange to shake his hand as a civilian, but I accept it. He doesn't rush into pleasantries. He studies my face as though confirming I'm the same man who once followed orders without question. You did what you had to do, he says quietly. You served honorably, you didn't deserve what they put you through. His voice is steady, unflinching. I swallow hard. I can't remember the last time someone told me I was worthy. He leads me into a small conference room where a few other veterans gather, faces lined by weather and worry. Andrews introduces me as a soldier who reminded us that vigilance and integrity still matter. I feel all eyes on me, a mix of curiosity and gratitude. He hands me a folder. Inside, an official invitation to serve as a volunteer advisor for a new veterans outreach program. He explains they need someone with first-hand experience of falling through the cracks and rising back up. Someone who can help navigate bureaucratic minefields and ensure aid reaches those who earned it. I flip through the pages, a modest stipend, resources for therapy, a workspace. It's not much in material terms, but it means more than all the gold in the world. It means trust. I step out of Veterans Hall and breathe deeply. The late morning sun feels different now, warmer, welcoming. I slip the folder into my jacket pocket and walk toward a nearby park where I once trailed Holt during the reconnaissance phase. I sit on a bench, feel the wood's rough grain beneath my fingers. I pull out my notebook and write one final entry: mission accomplished, honor restored. The words feel simple, yet they carry the gravity of every step I took, every plan I executed in the name of justice. I close the book and tuck it away. A group of kids plays on the grass nearby, their laughter pure and spontaneous. A young woman with a stroller smiles at me as she passes. I nod, and she nods back without fear or pity. I realize I'm part of the world again, not a ghost haunting its edges. I think of my old unit, the comrades I lost, the ones who never returned. I whisper their names to the wind, promising their memory will live on in the work I'm about to do. Colonel Andrews' words echo in my mind: vigilance and integrity. I stand up, brush dust from my jeans, and start walking toward the Veterans Center downtown. I'm no longer hidden in the shadows, cataloging weaknesses. Now I'll use what I've learned to build something lasting, a network of support that ensures no one else endures that final indignity alone. As I round a corner, I catch my reflection in a storefront window. Clear eyes, squared shoulders, the ghost of a soldier solidified into a living man. I step into the center's glass doors and am greeted by a chorus of hellos and grateful smiles. Andrews appears behind the reception desk and gives me a nod. Together, we'll navigate the bureaucratic labyrinth, expose the cracks in the system, and undo the damage done to too many veterans. I find my chair in a small conference area, place my folder on the table, and look around. These faces aren't antagonists or nameless crowds. They're brothers and sisters in arms, and I'm home. For the first time since they tore away my dignity, I feel whole. The mission is accomplished. The soldier never really left. He's right here, ready for the next deployment, this time on a battlefield that demands empathy instead of force, unity instead of isolation. And I wouldn't have it any other way.